Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to open up October's meeting of the Conservation Commission. I want to remind the folks in the audience that we are being recorded tonight, so if you are having a little sidebar, the people at home can pick it up, so just be cautious, and if you want to say something, please stand and state your name, and please speak clearly. We have a continued notice of intent to raise an existing home and construct a new single-family dwelling for Brian and Kelly Kelly at 330 Fifth Street. They have requested a continuance to the November 21st meeting, and that would be my recommendation to the board.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have a continued notice of intent to construct a single-family home from Plum Island Blue LLC at 17C Fordham Way. They have also requested a continuance to the November 21st date, and that would be my recommendation.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We have a continued notice of intent to construct a private dock and a walkway from Carl Rydell and Martha Kaiser at 58 Riverfront East. Good evening.
Good evening. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. Do I approach you?
Yeah, please,
Yeah,
please
all
come
right.
up and have a seat.
Okay,
I just put these up here because we can't see by the others.
all right. Thanks for your time this evening. I initially filed a notice of intent in June, and I was unable to attend that meeting. My wife came, and there was some questions asked, and she wasn't, familiar with the questioning, so. And the delay here has been, I'm a merchant mariner, I'm on a 2-week on, 2-week schedule, and this is the closest to sort of a convenient time. Your meetings are like mid-ish, so then it's difficult to schedule, so that was the delay.
No problem, Carl.
I found out some things in my filing that I had to get readdressed. There was some, the property's located in the ACEC. And so from the information from that last meeting, it felt as though that, would be the natural process to start a 91 or a 91 simplified filing. And in my exploration, I actually read quite a bit of that CMR 310. Pretty dry. But with this, the permitting guide, the Chapter 91 permitting guide, I came across this exemption from this process. And it reads, if you propose to install a seasonal dock, float or mooring, or raft that is bottom anchored and not permanently pile supported, it may be authorized by local harbor master or authorized municipal official through the annual section 10A, like what you have your mooring permits and dock permits. So I kept running across that, so I ended up contacting Frank Taormina at DEP for our region. Very familiar with the river. I guess that's who 91 commercial or residential would apply to. And this is the outline he gave me, that the state, he says this is easy. If you're in an ACEC and you're looking to put something in permanently from the high water mark, it's not seaward in my case, it's towards the channel, out. So I go outward. From the high water mark outward, the answer is easy, you can't do it. Just can't do it. But then he goes back to that, if it's bottom anchored float, that's temporary. Meaning, and it's temporary because it comes out for winter, it's allowed. If I was looking to put a piling below that high water mark, or like in Maine, they go out and then they make cribbing and fill it up with stone, have like an extension pier almost, not allowed. Never gonna happen, he says, in an ACEC. Now my lot, this is, I looked up on Oliver, okay.
I'm familiar with it.
And this line here is there were choices on what the delineation for high water mark was.
Mm-hmm.
I chose the contemporary, but they all were about the same. And I'm 58 Riverfront, and the high water mark is, and this is the marsh bank. And here's my home. There's a pre-existing stone bulkhead with 3-4 steps down to the marsh area. and the high water mark is here. Well within what I thought my design would accommodate in putting, actually, I'm not even gonna put the pilings at the very edge. I wanna be back far enough and cantilever
We want you
down to the ramp and out. And I mean, and the material, what this marsh is, it starts off as patins, you know, Spartina patins with, all the wood, and it goes forward at the very edge, and it's still within the high water mark. There's a mix of patins with alternate flora, and then it goes down. It's a sharp marsh bank. And so,
Where is you, show us your last post relative to that mark, Tom, please.
this is the, I drew it, this is the scale, so I mean, this just, it's gonna be about 8 feet back. I want it to be 8 feet back. Because if you look on some of the top-down views, also there was a question if I contacted the state of Mass, the Marine Fisheries, I sent them,
I got an email from them, and they were hoping to get something out more formal, but I at least have an email from them.
okay. And, my list there, one second. What was your question, Doug?
The relationship
Oh, okay.
of that last post
Yeah.
section to this line that
For
you
that
showed
line?
us. Yes.
I mean, it's not built, but I mean, I'm looking to be 8 feet back. It's about 8 to 10 feet back. I mean, I walked it again today, and that gives me enough solid ground that isn't interfered with, you know, ice, deterioration of that edge.
Without chance of skiving it off.
Yes, yes. And then, like a 20-foot ramp, so I have plenty to go, you know, down to the floating docks. And, that's my update, and, you know, that's my update. And I'm looking to, I guess there was some questions on the mooring type, and I kinda discovered those helix moorings, the screw moorings, and I want that. I'm gonna, I prefer that from here, put 2 here and 2 there, and then just block supporting the rest of the runway, because their shear strength is superior, and I wanna crisscross, the mooring lines here, so, you know, a skiff can get around it.
Mhm.
But I got existing docks on either side of me. I'm gonna shoal out before they do. I mean, I'm inside what is already existing, you know, for my terminal end. And
What kind of water are you gonna have underneath this at low tide?
0.
Okay.
Yeah, 0.
Alright.
And I'm gonna look to put a pad similar to, well, it's like a spud barge, you know, we use them in construction, marine construction. They're gonna be a bracket with, like a 6x6, that's gonna be, just comes down and pinned for my, to keep me elevated off the marsh, because, you know, they want water to flow,
Mhm.
and so this has to be 24 inches above the substrate.
Not so quick.
No,
24 is what we've always gone with.
okay,
Across the river, the other side of the river, we permitted it and we asked them for 24. They went to Division of Marine Fisheries and got 18 inches approved.
okay,
In this letter, for some reason, maybe because we've got rock on the south side of the river and potential mud and flats on your side of the river, they
It's
see,
marine clay. It's
well,
clay.
they see it as potential shellfish
Um,
bed. So they're asking for 30 inches versus the 2 feet on this side of the river, within this letter, the
Okay.
guidelines.
Okay,
And so that, I would assume that when you get that more formal letter from Fish and Wildlife,
Yeah.
that they'll have that laid out in there.
yeah, I comply with that, I just
Okay.
change that to, I'll write it on there
30
now.
inches.
I mean, it's not built, so, I
Yeah.
mean, just 30 inches. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but there isn't any, like, marsh mud on that side. There might have been at some time, but if you come off the marsh banking, I mean, you're not gonna lose your shoe, you know, it's about this, it is silty sand, but then it goes to marine clay rather quickly now, within my exposure to that
Changed a lot,
property.
huh?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's all in the sandbar now, all the loose stuff is gone somewhere else. And then there was an issue brought up about how the piles are gonna go in. I've got I got a building guide that says that I have to place by hand, so we're gonna dig a hole. That's how I'll put them in.
Okay, and work your way out, kind of paint your way out
Yeah,
onto the,
yeah, I mean, it's not a,
advance your deck.
it's not a time, money type thing, I'm doing
Exactly.
it myself,
Yeah.
so.
And the only other thing that was talked about in the letter from the division was, storage, winter storage.
Yeah,
A suitable place off the marsh for winter storage.
yeah, they can come up, at the landing, and,
It's nice to pull them up there.
I think I'll rent space from Ed Boyle, he's already prepared, I've already talked to him,
Okay.
yeah,
So as long as it's not in the marsh in front of your house,
Yeah.
and you've got a suitable spot for it.
yeah, yeah. That's correct.
Are there any other questions for the applicant?
Explains it to me, okay.
I think he's more than covered the bases, and
And
he
then,
certainly answered the questions that we had at the last hearing.
I mean, I think the initial, one of the things on putting the pile, we didn't know how you're gonna get them in there, is there,
Oh, the bulkhead is, I got stairs down, I got stairs down to it, so, and how am I putting it in, I'm gonna hand take it.
I think it sounded like, we were gonna get Ed Boyle to put them in, and that was kind of a flag. That would have been hard.
There was a mention of that.
Yeah,
But
Well-
if you say you're gonna put them in by hand, then that's one
and I
of
talked to
the
him, he
conditions
says,
can
well, if
reflect
that's what
that.
we have to do, that's what we have to do.
So-
We hand dig it.
Didn't we also talk about, how the ramp was gonna be?
The ramp's on wheels,
Okay, so this doesn't move, this rolls back and forth.
it's coming up and down with the tide, and as it comes up, the ramp's gonna move forward. This has a wheel, and that's fixed on the land side, am I pointing to the right thing?
No,
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
You are.
No, I.
So, it's gonna move forward, and, 3 feet maybe?
Gonna be able to handle a little
Well,
shimmy to the side.
I got a little experience in anchoring things, and what I'm gonna do is put the helix on this side
And go underneath.
and then go on the other side. The two, I would consider, I don't want any twisting of that forward end, so that's gonna be, kind of probably adjusted a little bit, but that's why I want the helix moorings there. I don't want them to pull, cause the ebb tide there, for a little while, and then it's gonna ground out. But it's not gonna move that much. Yeah, and then I'll crisscross the mooring lines, on that side.
Fishery said nothing about the lines, cleaning up.
Dragging in
Yeah.
the ground, in the mud.
I looked a little further into that, and then even on that seems to be done in areas that have a history of, or a current, existence of eelgrass. And there isn't any history of eelgrass in the estuary. The closest is like an Annisquam, up one of the little rivers, that has like very little tide flow.
Jeff's been looking for it for years.
And there isn't any,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
even the, like that, Mass Audubon like took over that study of the estuary that was done in the 60s as like a base point. And I actually volunteered with that Robert Bucksbaum a couple of years.
Yeah, I know, Bob.
And no eelgrass, there's no history of it. So that, the mooring lines, there's no coral, there isn't any coral. Or even a stony bottom that has like truncates on it, that you don't wanna shear
Break it
off. Sea anemones, there isn't anything there. Nothing grows below that low water mark, except clams underneath, maybe downriver, but it's, I would stay with the block and, line, or even chain on the last one, so there's some weight, stay close.
Good job, Colin.
I hope it's a
Are there
good
any
job.
butters here? Would anyone like to speak on this project? Are there any other questions from the board or comments? I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go back to my seat then.
You can if you'd like.
Thanks for your time.
I'll move we accept it as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor? Any opposed? We have a notice of intent for the improvement of an inadequate drainage system and redevelopment of an area permitted and used as a municipal gravel sand fill storage to a gravel parking lot in the town of Newbury on Olga Way. Good evening. I'd like to start out by saying I've created some confusion over this project, and I apologize for it. In some haste to get this project to press, we sent out some legal notices and a legal ad that needed to reference a specific document. So I referenced the documents that we had prior to getting these changes made, and the changes reflect what selectmen voted for and wanted at their selectmen's meeting. So this is not a municipal parking lot that we're talking about tonight. This is a gravel pad to be used for our DPW for storage of materials. You'll see that as it's being presented, but I wanted just to bring that up front. Go ahead, Matt, I'm sorry.
Thank you for that clarification. For the record, my name is Matt Tessier. I work with ARC Engineering here on behalf of the town for this drainage improvement project along Olga Way and the construction of the storage staging area to the rear northern side of Olga. So I'm going to start, can everybody see that already? So I'm going to start with the improvements on Olga Way. Our intention, for a while now, there's been very little grade, any pitch on Olga. So there's quite a bit of ponding whenever it rains hard. After meeting with the town a few times, going out here and witnessing a few really hard rain events, we developed, because it is so flat, we decided that the best way to attack the drainage improvements here is to have something that is fairly long improvement, so wherever you start to get ponding, the water has a place to go. So what we've developed is 3 foot wide by 2.5 feet deep stone infiltration trench. It'll be about 1 foot off the new edge of pavement. We're going to remove the pavement on this section of Olga and repave it so it has a super elevated cross slope, so any water that does land on the road will get through that little grass strip for some treatment and then get into the infiltration system. Obviously there's not a tremendous amount of room out here, so large detention basins and things of that nature weren't really an option. We also have a considerable amount of access to driveways and other things like that, so we have developed an infiltration trench that has larger stone for volume of storage of water underneath. 2 to 4 inch riprap will be used under there, and then there's a 12-inch layer of just rounded 3/4 inch stone, and it'll be compacted in short lifts, so this is easily drivable. A tire can drive along it at any point along it. Driveways can cross it, and it won't affect accessibility to any of the properties along the length of it. In addition to that, the low area of the trench is located all the way down to the southern end of Olga, which historically, at least this particular area, flows to a catch basin right adjacent to the end of Olga. We believe, based looking at old documents, that prior to the sewer improvement project, a lot of Olga, even though there was not a lot of pitch even back then, did a better job of pitching towards that area and drained the road previously. So this system should give some immediate relief to all of the areas, because the soils are a tremendous asset for infiltration, and this trench will encourage that. But it also mimics the historic drainage pattern of the water generally leading to this area. Once the capacity of the trench is kind of maximized in a really high rain event, then it will generally still direct the water to where it always has gone, down to that catch basin. And that summarizes most of the improvements on Olga. So I'm gonna,
Can I ask a question about those? That you talked about a grass strip,
yeah,
which is kind of not, there's no grass that's gonna grow there, so what is it really?
I mean, we're gonna try to establish shoulder grass, we're gonna plant it, we're gonna seed it, and we're gonna put a reasonable, 4 inch, I think it's 4 inches of loom, I can flip to the detail. It's required, you have to meet stormwater standards to the maximum extent feasible, and to just completely abandon the possibility of having a reasonable vegetative strip there, which is considered kind of a pre-treatment prior to infiltrating water. We're gonna give it the old college try, and hopefully we can get something to grow there. But those are the regs we deal with. On the flip side, you can kind of see a little bit here, and I'll talk more about this couple of colored areas up here when I flip it over and talk about the second part of this. So just north of where Olga, doesn't really end, but where it bangs 90 degrees and heads out across the front of the pump station, we're going to continue a gravel road from the back of where the fence is to the pump station building. We're going to bring a small extension to the fence and then gate this. And then we're going to remove the piles of material that are out here. We're going to flat grade this out with proper pitch to existing low areas. And this will have a minimum of 12 inches of material that gets placed over the staging area. Underneath that there'll be a filter fabric, so you get good stability of the material. And then we're going to develop, you see shaded in blue here, these are all water quality swales. They have proper beach type vegetation. They get you a certain, again, amount of filtration before this water is discharged to existing low areas. There's an existing low area right in here. There's another one to the back, and I think there's a really small one right over in this area. We're also removing, there's quite a bit of gravel area out there, so some of that outside of the area where I've got highlighted in yellow here, where they're going to use it for staging. We're going to pull up the gravel that's there. We're going to place 12 inches of sand and plant dune grass in there to try to bring some of the existing dune back. And then in order to avoid, migration of this yard getting larger over time, we're going to line the yard with a simple wooden guardrail to keep the desire to extend it into these drainage areas and the replanted areas of dune grass in the future. I mean, that stuff happens over time, so this should prevent that migrating anymore. And that's pretty much it on this part of it. It's a pretty straightforward layout of a staging area.
Where are those mounds in relationship to?
One second, guys. One second. I'll go to questions in the audience, but 1 minute. Matt, can we start back on the street?
Absolutely.
Now, it's set on this plan here, and I guess I can see it on this one, but when we reproduced it, we didn't get the shading area. That's all gonna get ground.
It will remove this pavement, that's
Okay.
correct. Yep. They compact the subgrade.
Yeah.
It's dead flat out there. I mean, it literally has almost no cross slope, and in many areas, I mean, it's jumping maybe 1/10 of an inch here and there, and it's essentially flat. So that's why we're having the ponding issue. So we're not gonna wildly change the grade because all the driveways are coming in right there.
That was my concern, that we've got 3 driveways, I guess, or at least 3, 4 that come into that.
Sure, so that's why we chose to go with a long drainage treatment piece. And then we've chosen to, while we recreate the same similar high and low points, and again, there's not gonna be a wild change in the grades out there, but we are gonna once we remove the top pavement, they'll compact the subgrade and they'll bring in like a dense mix. You can also reclaim the pavement and it can serve the same purpose. That would be a reasonable substitution for the dense mix. But they'll pitch this road from the existing grades on the eastern side of the road to the west side, and that will, you know, we'll have an inch or so play, and we'll just, you know, marry up to the driveways that are there, whatever we have to do to adjust for that, which should be fairly straightforward. And then that'll give pitch across the road into the drainage system. So we're never going to achieve a long longitudinal pitch all the way down the length of Olga. There's not enough grade out there. So this with very minor grade changes, by going across that, not that wide of a street, we should be able to achieve getting the water off the roadway when it rains.
Okay, because one of those guys that just got a permit to redo his driveway, and I'd hate for him to go out there and redo his driveway, and then we throw his pitch off on him.
Yeah, I if you could point out which road.
He's on the right-hand side,
Yeah, if you.
daily on the right-hand
Number
side,
6.
yeah, and
Okay.
right there, yes.
Yeah. And you're gonna pave it, or is it gravel?
It's
Yeah,
gonna be
we'll be able
gravel,
to- no, we-
but it's gonna be gravel, but they are gonna have a 3-foot wide, whether it be pavers or granite or something down at the street to give them a buffer between the street and the driveway, so they will have some sort of permanent pad that would need to be matched.
What the plan is to match the grades on that side of the street, so that should be fine. And even the grade changes that we have shown, they're like within 1/10 of an inch. So we're talking about, we've proposed this much, and I think we could easily adjust if there was something that was just recently done, or some kind of pad, or maybe we could even, I don't know what the timing of the installation of that project is, but so maybe we can time it all well, so we could just set it all at, you know, similar time.
Another note I noticed on the plan is that some of the material was to be removed and trucked.
Yeah, I mean, it could be reused on site too if it's appropriate material. It was not classified by us, but as long as it's good gravel, we can do a quick site check of it, and it can be used for the gravel base itself. But
That would be good, you know, if you were into gravel, but I was more talking about the material you're gonna find that's right on top, that first 12 inches of material. We didn't, once that stockpile was handled out back there, we didn't go all the way down to the original sand. There's still
Yes.
stockpile there.
right,
That stockpile's not really clean material, but it is material that's been screened, and at the most, it's been put through a 3/8 screen. So
Okay, yep.
that's what you've got in there.
Yep, yep.
It's not pristine, and I certainly wouldn't top dress with it, but I would wanna keep every bit of it there, because
that's fine.
like stated to the administrator the other day, there will become a time down Plum Island at some point where that will look like really good material some night,
Yeah,
so,
sure.
I'd hate to let any of it go off the island.
Yeah, I mean, it is a staging area, so we could certainly get the stockpile in a good spot and work around it. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, there's two
shouldn't
of
be
them, we'll have
an
to keep them
issue.
separate,
Yeah.
one's pristine and the other one has got material in it.
Sure, yep. The other thing I should have mentioned, but there is a stop sign leaving the yard, just so it's clear to folks using it, that, you know, they don't have the right of way as they come barreling out of the staging area. And then we've also proposed a couple of one-way signs on Olga, just to make sure that, you know, it's clear what the right flow of traffic is.
Any other questions from the board at this point, or comments? Would anyone like to speak?
Just going back to the other
Yes.
side, there's two mounds, I was there today, and you're right, there's one with some asphalt still in it, one's pretty clean, and then there's another mound to the left as I'm looking deep into the lot that actually looks like it's got a tree growing out of it now. Is that getting cleared out?
That long mound on the left-hand side was
Yeah.
probably put there long before I even got here,
Yeah.
and that is not gonna be touched to the best of my knowledge. That long berm, I'll call it a berm, but it's a dune now down the left-hand side.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't know exactly where.
Down here, Matt, down at this end, right there where your pen is, up a little further, along that edge.
Okay.
Is that what you're talking, Kevin?
Yeah, and those current two mounds are where on that diagram right now?
I don't have them.
Yeah, they're on, come up here, they're on the
Yep.
existing conditions plan, you can see where they are.
These, those two mounds right here?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And
they
then
are.
this is now going to extend after those mounds, which is, there's some kind of wood structure that's out there in storage right now that looks deeper into the lot. And then So that has to be somewhere in this area, and then this is all part of
That
this
is,
new lot?
that is all gravel.
All the way back here? This
Yes.
is where we're gonna be parking cars?
No, there's no,
it's just
this
a
is,
staging, it's
no,
gonna
this
be a
is not,
gated
it's not for
staging
parking.
area.
And the parking that's proposed is?
No,
It's
there's
not.
no parking proposed.
Okay.
That
There
use
is.
was not approved.
So,
Okay.
when I met with you and Jeff and Tracy the other day, it was Tracy and Jeff who said that under special permit, they would consider for special events, whether it be for PITA or to have parking there. And my question after digesting that is, well, if you're gonna park there once, and make it public parking once, it's always, and don't you have to go through a whole different permitting process to make
Yeah.
that happen?
In order to make that a parking lot, it would likely go through at least 2 additional processes, maybe 3. It would go to the building department for compliance with zoning. It's a non-permitted use down there. The only use down there is for single-family homes. So to create a parking lot, it would have to go to the zoning board of appeals. Prior to going to the zoning board of appeals, it would likely go to the planning board for site plan review for creation of those parking spots, and what would it yield, and what would you have for light, the whole gamut of what it would take to put a parking lot together. And then thirdly, it may need to come back to the Conservation Commission, because now you're taking a storage yard and you're turning it into a parking lot. And a parking lot is classified as a higher than normal pollutant load, simply because of the number of vehicles that are there, and may change what we'd have to do for stormwater. So there would be much additional process prior to turning this into a parking lot.
So I guess my question would be then, if the commission, after they review this and they wanna sign off on this, because I still had, questions about funding, and that's all with the town, They say it's in the budget, it's a lot of work. But can the commission make it a stipulation that this, you can never use this for special event parking, period, under this approval?
I suppose we can write anything we want into the order of conditions. So yes, the simple answer is yes. The more complicated answer is, when would that become a parking lot, I guess? So if I get pushback on if it's parked on once, and that's something I even brought up today, how many times, if this thing is once a year, is it once a week? Is it 6 times a week? It's the scope of it really that is unknown.
Right. So
The
that's
potential
what-
scope.
That's why I'm asking for you to consider the condition that it be explicitly prohibited to use that for parking other than town vehicles and town officer vehicles, period.
We can do that, and we'll say we'll consider it. We will consider it. Yes,
Dan Mahoney, now I have another problem to throw at you. I talked to Martha of the planning board, and according to, she's not sure it's going to have to go through the process that you're just saying. Because the first set of plans had designated parking spots. The selectmen voted to have those parking spots taken out. Once that was done, she believes it's not gonna have to go through this process you're stating.
okay.
So if
that's
you
correct.
vote on this tonight and you approve it, it's gonna be a green light go. That's gonna give the select people, I guess they have I'm not sure the wording, the power to be, let's
The
say,
authority.
the authority,
It's called the
like the
authority.
green. Say if there's a race and they wanna use the green as a place for people to stop and get water or whatever. So they go to the selectmen and say, we wanna use the green. If they give the permission. The way this is now going without designated parking spots, the same thing can happen by event, is that the wording? So let's say I'm having a party of 100 people, I need spots. I usually ask my neighbors if I can park there, but now I go to the town. They give me a permit so I can now use that town property. That's where you're heading with this. So I don't think it's gonna have to go to, Martha's not sure, because she hasn't really visited the whole thing. But it looks like with the way this is now taking those spots out, you will say okay to this, it can be used, it's gonna be used. And then, as I'm finding out tonight, there's gonna be legal issues with us or butters. I don't wanna go into that, because I don't understand it, but I just think there's more to this than we all real know. really know, and personally, I would like to see you table it tonight, not vote on it. Put it aside until we find out what really are the issues here. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Noel Helwig, 9 Oldway. I'm the direct abutter to this area. And my career, I was an insurance consultant in Boston for real estate investment trusts. And if you let people park there once a year, you're exposing not only the town, but also the town of Newburyport, because they're an abutter, and all of the abutters to liability. I mean, people coming from an event, walking down that street, which isn't lit properly, which is gonna have this new gravel drainage ditch along the side of it, which goes right in front of my house, and then are going to go back into a gravel parking lot when they're possibly intoxicated, possibly elderly people using walkers and canes. They're gonna fall down. Believe me, every company I represented owned hotels and supermarkets all over the United States. They all had parking lots. And alls we did was liability issues with the parking lots. So this is, it's a big, big expense for the town. And even if they have a municipal cap, the lawyers know to just sue the abutters, which is me. And then we require indemnification from the town, we'll sue the town, that gets around the municipal cap, and then everybody's in for this big liability headache, for what?
All right.
To give somebody an opportunity to park their cars for free? Well, we don't need it. I mean, I don't need the extra liability or the tax burden.
I understand all this, and I've discussed this quite a bit over the last couple of weeks with a lot of different folks. And I wanted to let the conversation go a little bit far afield tonight, but we have to remember what our authority is here, and it's 310 CMR, it's the Wetlands Protection Act. If we have problems with its use, then we need to see the building inspector, he's the zoning codes enforcement officer. We need to see the Board of Selectmen for their allowed uses down there. It may be that the board wants to go down and do a site visit down there, and we could do a site visit over the next month, and then we can get together next month again and take a look at this issue again. But again, our authority is not the use of that property, it's the impact to those activities relative to the Wetlands Protection Act. So that's our authority here tonight. And I understand that that doesn't get to your question one bit, but it's not my authority to get to your question.
I understand that, but
I understand the point you're making. I've been here long enough. I truly understand the point you're making. But again, not our authority.
But Doug, at the very minimum, you said that they'd be out of compliance for the zoning for that area if they ever used it for public parking. So at the very minimum, they'd have to go to the planning and zoning.
What I would suggest you do is talk to the zoning codes enforcement officer and see what his opinion of that would be.
Right.
It's my opinion if you turn it into a parking lot. If you use it once, his opinion might not be mine, so he's the guy that would make the call. You should talk to him.
That's Sam.
Yes, that is Sam. Yes, ma'am.
Marguerite Flanagan, 11 Plum Island Boulevard. I'm on the corner of the east corner all the way. I am wondering why this project is necessary. It seems to me that the town has had for years no problem in using this property for staging just as it is.
We have had problems, and it's one of the reasons we want to get some gravel underneath it, because you can't drive much in that sand that's down there. It doesn't support much. And even our big front end loader that's down there, when you get sand in the bucket and it gets in that material that's right there, it pops and it hops on the front end. It's terrible for the equipment, and you can't back an 18-wheeler in there. So you dump one load there, and that's it. You gotta come down with another machine, you've gotta move that load, get it out of the way with something that can drive through the sand, back it up far enough, get that truck out of there and bring another one in. It's very unfriendly to use it. So they need some type of solid surface that they can get their 18-wheelers and their truck on to negotiate in there and to move around.
And is gravel adequate? Won't that just eventually sink down into this quicksand?
It'll have some cloth under it, and yeah, I mean.
Gravel with the filter fabric would hold that kind of a load.
Even with a
Yes.
vehicle that large?
I mean, you know, like any lot, even a paved lot needs maintenance at some point. Gravel lots obviously need to be maintained to stay, effective periodically, but I mean, it would be suitable for that kind of use.
We're talking like a 1/10 of an inch pitch over the width of a road. It does seem like a major expense for very little gain, 1/10 of an inch, and rain comes down. I mean, what's that gonna stop from that being
So
a
that's
big pool?
about 1.5% based on the width of that road only being about 10 feet most of the way. We've got 1/10 to 1.5 of pitch across it. That's standard cross slope on a road. So that would get the water to pitch from the east side to the west. Sorry. Yeah, from the east side to the west into the drainage trench. That's standard cross slope, between 1% and 2%.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Well, when Dan brought up his conversation with the planner, and she said, well, they have to go through all those approvals because the Board of Selectmen already has approved the plan with parking spaces on it. Matt, you nodded your head, yes, that's true.
The
Or you
site
seem
plan
to
review
concur.
requirement that I am aware of is if you're disturbing 5,000 square feet for construction of a parking lot. So obviously, we're not constructing a parking lot here. I'm being told the use is staging, that's what I believe it to be, so, I mean, if the use changes, then I think they would have to go through that process. So at the time that the use would change, even if you don't do construction, I think you'd have to go through that process that he's describing. But if you build a staging area, it doesn't fall into that same criteria that trips the site plan review requirement.
So then is what you're saying suggest that a one-time permit could not even be,
I mean, I'm not a zoning officer, you'd have to, I think Doug was correct saying you have to get the zoning officer's opinion on.
Doug, did you get to speak with Martha at all before tonight?
No.
Because the way she was seeing this, with those parking spaces gone, if you say yes to this tonight, it's done. It's not gonna have, she's not sure, but she doesn't think it's, like you just said, it's not gonna have to go through those processes. That those are eliminated. So,
Well, eliminated for a staging area or
No, eliminate-
Eliminated for a
parking?
For staging area.
Right, a gated,
it could just go to the staging area.
Right.
But the select people will still be able to, if you go and say you need to use that town property, then they would give you the permit. That's the leeway they're gonna have.
Well,
Folks,
we're asking
I
the
know,
commission to make
We're supposed to be
a,
going to it, Tim.
you know, they said they would consider making a stipulation in the approval that no, you can't use it for parking ever. So all we can do is ask, and then to Doug's point, you go to the zoning code
Enforcement officer.
enforcement officer or the building inspector. Sam?
Yes.
Patrice Allen, 5 Alga Way. I have 2 questions. One, what are we staging?
We're staging materials that we used down at Plum Island. The 2 piles that are there already will be staged there. And as you see, it has been used for other things. We've allowed Newbury in there while they're replacing all the hydrants on Plum Island. So you might see some of that stuff in there. Most recently, we've asked them to come get it and move it. We want it out of the way right now. But that's up to the town what they want. That's not our purview. It's up to the town selectmen and the administrator if they want to let Newburyport in there for staging materials. But as far as it goes now, the town has put, when we had lifeguards, we had all our lifeguard stands in there. I mean, historically, it's been used for multiple different purposes.
And speaking to that, when the lifeguard stands were there, we had we've witnessed several times kids climbing up there, drinking and partying and falling off. We've witnessed, when the Newburyport has brought this last amount of, massive amounts of materials and trucks there, we ended up having to call the police because they were blocking the entire road and working outside the hours they were supposed to, and it was a very destructive period of time for us. So as an abutter, I don't really want to be an industrial site. I don't know how that can be managed, but I don't think Newburyport has the value that you may have as the town, because it's your property, for how they and where they put things. They ran over all the beach grass, they ran over our neighbors' lawns, they parked in our parking places, they blocked them.
That's likely why they were asked to leave.
Yes, that's.
So, yeah, I mean, you either behave, and, you know, you can come down and
Yeah.
share the facilities, and, you know, they share things with us too. You know, on the island, we have a pretty cooperative spirit with them down there. But if it's gonna be abused and things like that are gonna happen, yeah, that's what happens, you're out.
My big concern is that.
But again, that's not my authority whether that goes on or not.
So the materials that are put there, who's in charge of that?
DPW. It's the DPW staging area, that's the intention, that they've signed the application.
Just because some of that stuff gets really abused by kids coming through and people hanging out. My second question is, we have a sweet little fence and some plants there, are they all going to disappear?
No, we've kept the project within the, you know, limits of the edge of driveways about, so we haven't just removed any plantings or fencing or anything like that.
Thank you for that.
We don't have any authority to convey property rights, so if it looks like digging a 4-foot trench within 6 inches of your fence and sand isn't a good idea, then likely they would have to put some sheet in the ground, sheet pile or something, or drive a piece of metal down in the ground to hold that bank in while they put that stone in there, compact that stone, and then pull that sheet out. So this doesn't give the town license to injure your property.
Well, thank you, appreciate it.
Yes.
My question is just on timing, when is this planned for and how long would it take to complete?
I'll speak to the construction timeline. In regards to if you hired a earthwork guy, and I don't know the capabilities of the DPW, is the only reason I say that. If they took it on themselves, maybe I could be a little off. But this would be less than a month of activity. It won't take long. This is only the improvements along Olga to adjust the grade, remove the pavement would take maybe a couple of days, adjust the grades of the road, and then this is only a 3-foot wide, 30-inch deep trench, so that stands up pretty good, and they just line it with fabric and fill it with stone. So this piece will come together in a few weeks, and then it will get paved, and then the staging here doesn't take long at all, to spread some gravel and put some fabric down. So I would say you're looking at a month or so with a
And
construction.
what's the planned timeline for it?
I don't
the
know what
piece of
the
your question, my understanding is now it's gonna be springtime, and I would find that the highway department, Newbury DPW, is probably gonna do a good deal of the work. They don't grind their own pavement, they don't usually lay their own pavement, so that would likely get subbed out. But the drainage work on the edge of the road, the prep with the gravel in the gravel field there, they would likely do that, but that's not a given. Yes, ma'am.
On the east side of the road, which is my property line, there's a 10-foot easement that was granted for the water project. I'm wondering, is my property going to be disturbed? I'm asking specifically because I have a wonderful ancient wall of lilacs there.
Yeah, I'm not sure which house is yours, but we picked up all
Right
the,
on the corner.
I picked up, we located all the vegetation, and we have kept the disturbance on the street side of all of that. So that we're not anticipating removing any vegetation or fences. I don't even believe any mailboxes or anything like that were within the limits, so.
Thank you.
Yes, Kevin.
We got those 2 big piles out there right now.
Yes.
How much more do you anticipate, and how much deeper are those piles, if that was all it was gonna be in it? How much further back are they going from where they currently exist? That's a dog leg left, right, is what we got over here?
I'm gonna leave the configuration of the yard and the piles up to the highway department. I don't wanna try and tell them how to do their job or where they go. As long as they keep them in their staging area, I don't care. And we're likely to get a fair amount of material. You know, if you take a foot over that whole thing, there'll be a sizable pile of material there.
You got those 2 piles, you're saying if you go much further back than those piles right now, you're into softer sand. Are we disturbing or contaminating more soil by going back there, where if that's
No,
pretty
'cause I'll-
pristine?
If you wanna step up for
Yeah.
1 minute, I can show, and then maybe that can also help here, is that there is a previously disturbed line on one of these plans. There it is, right there, that dashed line.
Yeah.
has some gravel all in this area.
So we are inside
Right, but
that.
pretty lightly bony here.
Let's,
All these
yeah.
let's
left
go
of
to
the-
this, it's much clearer, I think, on the other right here.
Yeah, so within the.
See this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So within these limits, we're gonna, adjust the gravel base down enough that we can roll the filter fabric out, which is what kind of gives it that structural strength for the larger trucks to ride on, and then they'll cover this with a minimum of 12 inches over the fabric. The grades aren't gonna change much from existing, I can show you.
Which you will be planning on, they'll have this whole access, they can drive right to the end of the,
Yes.
their gravel.
Yes.
So how far in beyond the existing gravel, pile are
This
they
is the
going in?
existing
So the
gravel,
piles are,
Yeah, they would,
A couple hundred feet?
yeah,
well,
There's 200 feet right there, so a couple hundred feet.
Well, I
If you
understand.
walk out there right now, this is sort of like a flat plateau, and you can see the difference in material when you get to this end here. It's fairly apparent where this
Okay, so
point
this is not soft sand here?
I mean, some is
It's-
blown in,
yeah,
but this is a gravel base to it.
All the way out
Yeah.
already?
Yeah.
This,
Okay.
this area right here, starting right here and going all the way down here about this wide to this point, if you remember when the material was out there, when they were doing the water and sewer project, all that extra material, that's the footprint that we're talking about.
Okay.
and this is the edge of the dune right here, or is that to go up? Or
That's
where it's at?
vegetation.
Yeah,
That's
there's
all
the,
vegetation.
Yeah.
cedars or something, I can't remember what's up there. Oh, it's-
And then it's flat for a little bit in there, Kevin, then it
Yep.
starts to rise pretty quickly
Yeah.
on that
Okay.
edge.
And that
Yes,
one
Dave.
big
Is it
pond
necessary to
that's
have
covered
it
with beach
sludge?
grass, that has to have half of its
In other
entire
words,
property.
I've only seen that entire, what you were just showing there with the curve going back.
Yep.
I've only seen that full twice,
Okay.
in all the time I've been out there. So why, I guess, why is it this big? Because it's
So
so
it-
flat now and they've used it like that before?
So it's been full twice, and if you filled that up the way it was during the water and sewer project, you'd be working one end of it, you couldn't even drive around it. So you take the two piles that were there, and you start putting them in an area that's 60 feet wide. Isn't gonna be very long before they're spread out to 30 feet. He's gonna need a few feet to get in beside each one of these piles and to drive down along them and access these piles. So, yeah, I think, does he need every bit of it? I really don't know, Danny, to make it, to bring it down, to make it any less and make it inconvenient for him to be out there, seems kind of counterproductive.
And I know you explained this to me before, but I forget what you told me. The very end, yeah, right there, what is that? That's square.
So if a truck does, access past the piles, maybe the front end loader would grab something, it gives him a spot to
Okay,
pivot
thank you.
in 3-point turn.
Yes.
I'm curious if there's anything in narrative form or any other information that I haven't seen about how the material that's gonna be stockpiled out there is actually managed, so it doesn't get just sort of pushed off the sides and.
Just
that kind of
the
thing.
physical barrier of the guardrail to keep the trucks from putting it in an area where they can't access it is not, we haven't proposed any
No bins.
bins or anything like that. That would have to be something that DPW would, choose to, I wanna have 6 material types, so I'll bring in some bins.
Now, on the site right now, just on the site right now, there's the old message board that was down at the beach, and I know DPW did all that work. They threw it on private property. And there's a old bike rack that they removed, that's also on private property. So it concerns me a little bit, the DPW is that reckless, they just throw stuff on people's property as opposed to managing it themselves. How can they manage this?
Well, the guardrail, it goes around the whole length of this will all be.
I think it speaks pretty well to having some definition down there and having this guardrail down there. They likely don't do it on purpose. I know that they don't want to injure private property, and they don't want to get in trouble for being on private property. They probably likely just don't realize where they are. Yes, ma'am.
I'm at 15 Plum Island Boulevard, which is actually Weber's. But I'm curious, once this is staged, are we going to see increased traffic, more 18-wheelers, as you mentioned? Is it going to increase the activity in that area?
For a short time during construction, yes. After construction, it shouldn't be any different than it is now. If there's an event down at Plum Island and things are needed, yeah, you'd see a flurry of activity for a short time. But that isn't something that's used heavily now. It should not be used for storage of the trucks and stuff themselves. They belong down the DPW barn. So, I don't think the town would wanna park things down there anyway, so it doesn't sound like a good idea to me.
They've been using it as a snow farm, will that continue?
Well, with some of the pressure that we get in some of the neighborhoods and some of the problems that we have for 10 feet, it may be an attractive idea. I think the commission would have to think about what the impacts would be to putting so much snow in one place, so I don't know that, we'd wanna take a 50 by 60 by 200 foot long pile of snow and put it in there. Might not be a good idea.
Right. How wide is the gate? Really wide.
Let's say it's the full, like 24
20
foot
feet,
width.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions?
So that will be closed at the end of business every day, or?
We didn't go that far in the permit, it's to dictate exact yard usage, but I'm sure.
My guess would be, it would be similar to the access out the landfill, is that when the DPW is not there, the gate should be closed and locked when they're not there.
Oh, so even during the day if they're
Even
not-
during the day, it shouldn't be open. If they're not using it, it shouldn't be open.
What do you know what the gate is in this view?
Is it off this view? Is that why it's not on?
Well,
Yeah, it's on
way
it's
up.
on the next sheet.
It's well beyond the pump station.
It's like right here, yeah. The back line of the fence behind the pump station is what gets extended, the gate goes there.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Yes.
Just the
Patrice.
last clarification, so given the amount of years that we've been dealing with this and the sort of the mistrust and the miscommunications and the, there's a sort of standard belief that the end goal is to get a parking lot there, and this is just the first step to making it happen. That's sort of the mistrust or the miscommunication has resulted in sort of a general feeling about that. Is there anything else we should do before this commission agrees to this project to ensure that our concerns are addressed so that we are not cut out of the process?
That depends on the board. If the board wants to leave this open tonight, open for a site visit, open for information, then the board could do that. If they close the hearing tonight, if we vote to close the hearing tonight, then no, there wouldn't be any more opportunity.
Okay.
Has everybody on the board been down to look at the site?
Is everybody familiar with the site?
I'm very familiar with it. I haven't been there to specifically look at this project, but I've worked for the town over the years. I've been there personally when they dump, for example, catch basin cleaners, which they have to dump them there. They're not allowed off of island.
I would just, and I'm not trying to call anybody out or single anybody else, but I just think it would be imperative that you all go down and take a site visit, just to see what it is that we're all so concerned about.
Mhm.
I don't think that's asking so
Is that
much.
something that the board would like to do?
Sure.
All right, we'll schedule a site visit?
Sure.
Let's schedule the site visit right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The rest of this week is not good. So we're looking at the week of the 23rd. You want to do it next week or sometime? I mean, we have till the 21st of next month. From now till the 21st of November, that will be when we next meet.
You don't have to
So
do
if
it.
we're gonna have a site visit, it would be continued to the November 21st meeting. Are there any, anything that's out, or any requests? With Matt's time also, you're gonna be down, would someone from the office be down there?
Yeah, we could be there if
Okay.
need us there, absolutely.
I'm going next week.
You're gone next week, meaning the week of the 23rd?
Yes.
All right, do you wanna look at the last week of October, first week of November?
Sure, it's okay.
A day, particular day?
I'm pretty much open. We'll do it on Halloween.
You wanna grab the 30th?
Sure.
Monday? Monday the 30th? Matt, is that all right with you?
What time?
Well, we don't want to be too late because it's dark by 6:30 now, but certainly I mean, I'm a captive audience, I'm here all day, so if it's during the day, that's fine. If it's sometime between 4 and 6, that's fine also.
No, I got something at 6, so I have to be done and then you can do it by 6.
All
So
right,
how about during the day?
during the day is fine. Will everyone make it during the day? What time?
3?
3 o'clock?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome, Kevin. So it's 3 PM on, yes, 3 PM, October 30th, Monday.
Is it time to organize the protest?
Is there,
Okay.
yeah. Thanks, buddy.
We'll meet you with torches and pitchforks.
Hey, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I'm gonna chain ourselves to
So
the
it is
gate.
Halloween next week, so we can't have torches and pitchforks.
Yeah, whatever's appropriate. We'll leave that up to the neighborhood welcoming committee. How's that? Any other questions or comments before we close this tonight, and continue this tonight? Anything that we should know so that we can be prepared?
I just want to thank you for your careful consideration tonight. It's deeply appreciated.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yes, Dan?
Matt, could you just sort of show me where the whole configuration of the yard with the fence and all that is? You know, make sure we have adequate detail on that.
So just,
I did state that.
this is a match line for the next sheet I'm gonna show you. So this is the pump station building and the fence behind it, a little fenced in area. This is that same match line, this is the back of that fence. So the pump station building's right up here. This is a little extension, new extension of that fence from the corner of it over, and then this is the gate. So the whole lot's closed from this point, the whole of it.
I think I was specifically, I mean, you mentioned this was all gonna be like, there's gonna be some barrier there to
Yeah, so
define
from-
the area.
Yep, from this point on the east side, we're running guardrail all the way down the length of it, wooden guardrail. And then, just like that side, this whole piece will have guardrail along here. This is pretty defined because it's wooded, so there's really no need for it. There's just gonna be a slight depressed trench to bring storm water to this existing low area.
And it's just, you know, I've stared at this long enough. This goes uphill here?
Yes, and this is very steep uphill over here. And these are the two existing piles. Once you kind of turn this corner, it looks pretty flat. You can pretty easily pick it out with your eye, the direction of
Is the
it. We can maybe throw some stakes in
That would be
for
great.
the sidewalk so we can really
Is the finished grade here same as existing, or?
Slightly altered, so this is an existing 8 contour over here, and this is the proposed 8, so we're engineering it a little to make sure we get good pitch and towards the water quality swales, but in general, yes. I mean, it's not zero change, but it's very close.
It's not gonna be a foot higher?
No,
A foot lower or anything
No.
like that?
no. During construction, they'll have to drop it a little to get the fabric in and then lay the gravel over it.
Thank you, Matt. Anything else? Then it is my recommendation to the board that we continue this hearing to the November 21st date.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? See you all on either the 30th or the 21st.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Kevin, honestly, if you go out there and don't look too carefully, you'll see where that point is.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see the change in the sand, you'll see that there's a little bit of, I don't know, it's
But yes,
heather or
it talks
something
about
out there,
staging
there's
area.
some plant life out there. And it kind of goes to a plateau, and you can look in the sand and you can see the same little contaminants that you see in the dirty pile, you'll see on the ground, and then all of a sudden it'll stop. And that's where that's that loop that you're looking at right there. As a matter of fact, I think there's a couple of posts out there also, a couple of poles.
Again, very much appreciate you.
Take care.
Sorry, I'm the new guy, I'm one of the organizers.
Well, welcome.
Jack.
Hi, Jack. Nice to meet you.
See you everybody. All right, I just didn't see you.
No problem, no problem.
Even if we wrote a condition in, it can't be used for parking. Can't the selectmen override that?
No, I don't think so.
Goes on the
But they
deed.
could appeal our order of conditions like anybody could appeal the order of conditions. And
They
the order
could
of,
just, no.
well, no, they really can't. I mean, it's a document of law for them like it would be anybody else. Yeah, so if they don't, again, if they don't like it, they could appeal to DEP to change those conditions. If the condition is, yeah, well, if the condition is written, if the condition is related to the act and to our authority, then likely it would never get struck. If it's something we put in there that's outside of our authority, then it would be struck. Now, if you have a genuine problem with stormwater potentially from cars being there, well, then it's pretty easy to tie it back to that decision. And, you know, I think it would stand, would likely stand.
This is designed for staging area.
Yes.
Or parking.
Yes.
So this would require a special permit, parking
Well, special permit, I don't know what, yes, it would be some type of permit for the zoning board of appeals, whether it be special permit or not, I don't know. But it would be a change of use.
Yeah.
There's been parking there historically, it's been used for almost everything historically, but not to the extent that it's drawn here on this. We've closed that for now though, so we better move on. We have a request for determination of applicability to construct a sunroom on an existing flat roof structure and to install deck boards and railings on the adjacent flat roof from Karen Abbott at 22 Columbia Way.
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
My name is Bob Mansour. I'm representing the applicant of Caddy Enclosures. And we are in the process of, as you
I'm
stated,
sorry, do you have your tear sheet?
I have nothing.
Okay, I'm gonna,
1 second, sir, problem?
Would you mind if I shut this door?
I don't mind at all, no, I
Thank
don't
you.
mind.
I'm just gonna need someone to bring it by the office.
What sheet?
The tear sheet from the newspaper that they give you after you publish the legal ad.
I wasn't told to bring that, so.
Okay, yeah,
we can get it to
I
you.
think I might have told her, so somebody can drop it off.
Tear sheet?
Yep.
One time when Seal's got a little pen.
How'd that happen?
Good question.
Okay, fair enough.
Tear sheet from the end.
Yeah. The tear sheet, that proves you met your legal requirements, so usually we find those things, but if we don't see them,
No problem, I wasn't, nothing was mentioned, you called me the other day about this information.
yeah,
Sorry about that.
yeah, I saw this and I thought,
That's okay.
yeah, it isn't
No
quite,
problem. No problem. So we are, set of plans here, constructing a sunroom on top of an existing deck that's already been built and been there for several years. All we're doing is, putting in an aluminum sunroom on top of this structure. And on top of the open part of the deck, what we're doing is we are putting in some pressure-treated sleepers to create a deck. Right now, what exists there is a rubber roof. Her husband built this several years ago, and he's since passed away a couple of years ago. So all she wants us to do, right in front of this window section here, is to construct the sunroom. And then around the sides, we're going to be putting in railings and a pressure-treated deck. So we're doing nothing to the surrounding ground. We're just working off an existing foundation. In fact, that's what the top looks like right there.
furthermore, the existing grounds of turf lawn.
Exactly. And we're the manufacturer of the sunroom. It's all aluminum and it comes from pieces, and we basically construct it. It takes about a week and a half to build it. Probably take us the total time up there about 2 weeks to do the entire project. So we're not doing anything to the surrounding ground, other than we come with one pickup truck, generally a couple of guys. We have ladders to get up there until we build a set of stairs, which would be built from this corner right over here to go back down. There was an existing set of stairs years ago, so we're just gonna construct it from this point going down.
Okay, have you spoken to the building inspector about this project?
Yes, that's what triggered you coming here.
Okay.
Yes, we've already made the application to the building department.
Oh, right, right.
So we've gone through the motions to trigger everything else.
It's a zoning, okay, all right.
And it's my understanding from Ms. Abbott that this is one of 3 structures, it's above the 100-foot floodplain.
Yeah, she's in the
Can I
zone,
just
which is,
interject real quick? I don't think it's gotten to the point where Sam's reviewed it yet. It's just, it got to the initial point where we realized it had to go through conservation process. But I don't think the building inspector's looked at it yet.
Well, my
installation guy comes, he brings a packet to the building inspector, and we were told it had to go through conservation after.
Right, cause I do the initial review, and then I don't think it's gone to him yet, though.
That's something that, again, that my CSL, contractor supervisor does.
That's why I want to bring it up, though, before you get too far down the road and you get this thing scheduled, an increase in footprint is gonna create a trip to the zoning board of appeals.
There is no increase in footprint. The building is already designed.
I understand, but how about that stairway you're gonna put in?
The stairway is off to the side right over here.
An existing?
If it was existing, it fell down, and we're just putting new one in there.
Okay, all right, that's not my call, so I'll leave that up to the building inspector.
Some photos of that staircase would be useful.
Mhm.
So where's the pad where the staircase is going?
It would, it's not shown here, but it would probably be in this location right
Where
here.
the AC unit is? Looks like a generator. Or whatever.
It was an existing stair, she told me that, I didn't know the exact location.
Oh, it's not an AC unit?
No,
It's a
there's no,
dog carrier.
there's no AC, there's no AC in the hall.
You heard it here once.
Any other questions or concerns for the applicant?
The building inspector hasn't reviewed it, can we proceed?
That's why, the fact that there used to be a stairway there, that's a good thing. The fact that it's not there anymore, and we don't have any picture evidence, and we don't know how long it's been taken away. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to do those things prior to the removal, but, again, that's gonna be Sam's call. I think it's a pretty benign project for us, if he calls, where our authority is to make sure that they have either entered into process or obtained all other permits. They have had an initial conversation with the building inspector. It's a rather benign project. If it was more than this, it may be that the board would want to hold it. But I certainly think that the check is there. Jennifer's aware of it, and Sam will be made aware of it, so. I personally don't have an issue with closing the public hearing tonight if the stairways are our only issue. If someone else does, please
I'd
voice
like
your
to know
concern.
more
but-
about the history of that stairway.
Yeah, I'm sure Sam's gonna wanna know a little bit about the history of the stairway
I've
also.
heard that before.
Yeah.
Well, if the stairway became an issue, it's really not necessary for the project.
Okay.
It was just a means of egress for her to get off of the deck, because she has total access through the sunroom into the house.
Well, but we're not adverse to it.
Oh, no,
I'm not adverse to
I
it, so.
understand, but if it became an issue for the commission, and I understand the concern, if it became an issue for the commission, then I would just make the recommendation, we not put it there. And it's just a means of egress to get off the deck when people are coming to the house. They have total access, there actually is, I don't have that photograph, but from this side, when you come up the driveway, this is the access, there's another set of stairs that's existing to come into the house. So again, this is just a means of egress.
Okay.
So if it became an issue,
Could
we
drop it.
just drop it off, we just put it on.
We could ask for a sketch or something, or a plan view of it, in relation to where the staircase is gonna drop down onto the ground.
Do you have that?
I only have a sketch of, because of the existing condition, this is where the
Oh,
sun
it's
is
good.
going, and this is just my sketch from my department, my production guys. as to where
What
this
is the
area-
ground here now?
What is
this-
the ground
this
here
soil?
now?
Well, that picture doesn't really show,
And-
is it
and I
the stone?
understand.
Oh, it looks like a
There is
lawn.
some stone. What happens is the driveway's here, and there's a set of stairs that comes up to walk over another set of stairs here.
Understood.
So it's just ground and it's some grass area, and that's about it. What I remember, I haven't been there for a while, there's something off the top of my head. But this was just our depiction of where we're doing it, just for
Right,
the production
right.
guys to know what we're doing. Again, if it's a concern, we just won't build it. And I understand the reason, because you're gonna need some support for that set of stairs. I totally get
You
that.
need some type of a pad, yes.
Totally get that, and usually what we end up doing, depending on the building department, Some building departments just allow us just to put a couple of concrete blocks in to support the stairs. Others want footings in the ground, and I understand the concern.
2 inch by 30 inches.
Yeah, in this zone right here, patio blocks probably sufficient. If they were east of Northern Boulevard, you'd want a couple of pylons at the bottom of that stairway, so. But that's probably not the case here, so the board can determine right now if they want to leave that stairway on there, or if it's an issue for the board, you know, let's hear it.
For me.
How is your discretion? I know the applicant will abide by what you decide.
Are there any abutters here? Would anyone like to speak on this project? I'll go back to the board one more time. Any questions, any more questions or concerns for the applicant?
For me.
Then I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I move that we approve as presented, including the stairway.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Well, the only thing I'm gonna ask for is all that stuff that you've shown us tonight, whether it be tonight, just give me a copy of it, please, yeah.
I printed them out just in case you need.
Excellent, thank you.
So,
And will you get that stairway that way? We want that.
it's gonna cost you for this one, so that's okay, it's my sketch, it's on my file. This
This is what we want, that's all.
which is fine, this was depicting the original situation, the deck, and this is just to show my, again, my production guys, and I just written all my paperwork, the way the stairs was going along with my construction notes, just to give them a sense of what we're doing.
Okay.
So existing and new, it's just a note.
Do you need us to copy that?
No,
or
no,
do you
I
want
have,
a
I
copy?
have.
Okay,
Would you like a copy of these?
Please,
structural drawings?
please,
Okay.
whatever you've shown to us
Which is
tonight,
fine.
yeah, I'd like to have a copy of it.
This is, again, just to, this is a elevation view, and there's just one 4 sheets of these, oops. Right away, sorry about that.
It's okay.
And side views of what the room looks like, and then some details that we put in for the engineering department.
Thank you, Bob.
No problem. And you just need that tear sheet, so that's the ad that, from the ad on
Yeah, the
the.
newspaper will usually, you know, give it.
She
you
emailed
mail
it to me, so I can, that's
They
all you.
usually like just rip the page out of the paper and give it to you, they either mail it to you.
Well, I have a copy on it, of an email.
Okay.
Will that suffice? It has all of this. Will that suffice?
Yes.
Okay. And I can email it to you?
Mhm.
Okay. If you, because I know I have a copy somewhere, give me your email address. And then that phone number.
Bob, I know you're somewhat familiar with the process, but there's a 10-day appeals period for this. It starts the day after the postmark on the envelope that we send this out to DEP. It is, if time's of the essence with you, it is the only process, negative determination, that you can work at risk. So if it's important that you got down there and got started, or important to the client, they can certainly issue a letter to the commission saying they acknowledge that they're working at risk. And at that point, the commission could sign off on the building permit.
Now, as far as, what is your best guess for this whole process? Including the 10-day, what's the approximate date that you're thinking?
This is a determination. I usually get these out pretty quickly. So I might get it on Jennifer's desk the end of the week. She may be able to deal with it next week sometime, so.
So probably roughly the first week in November.
Probably, that's pretty good.
The only reason I'm asking is because we have production schedules, and I
Right.
don't even know what my production crews are gonna be ready for it. Right now, the structure is already in our warehouse, just waiting for this process. So once everything gets through, if we need to use that, you know, that letter that you mentioned, we will. I'll let my office know, and they can make that determination.
Okay, and before you get too far down that road again, you ought to call up the building inspector and have a discussion with him relative to the stairway, then you can determine whether to leave it on the plan or drop it
I'll do that
off.
tomorrow.
Okay,
I can pass that information on to my office.
okay,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Have a good evening.
You too. We have a request for determination of applicability to install a driveway with paved and gravel areas from Dennis Palazzo at 67 Old Road.
Gentlemen,
Hi, Dennis.
Jennifer. So my project is probably considerably less exciting than previous projects. Here's my driveway. basically I have a gravel driveway now.
One second, you wanna throw that tape sheet at,
I,
Jen? Oh, you've already got it, okay, I'm sorry, I apologize.
this is an extra.
Gotcha,
Anyway.
all right, sorry for the interruption.
So basically, I have a gravel driveway now, and removal is a challenge, as we all know. So I just have to do the driveway.
You're gonna pay both of them,
Yes,
okay, in their entirety,
Yes.
as drawn,
yes.
no modifications to them.
No.
So there's one here, leads up to the garage, and then there's a free.
So where does this one begin and end?
So this one is, this gravel drive here, it
Oh, I see,
was
okay.
existing when I purchased the property. I did put this addition on, within the past year. And this is the garage here.
Yeah,
And this is the,
yeah, so this is the one driveway.
This is 24 by 34.
And this is absolutely, there was flood issues, there was a lot of, that's what some of this is back here. So it's that.
And as you know, snow removal. Snow
When
blower.
you plow it now, how do you plow
But
this?
it's not changing, it's just
Well,
cover.
it's
Yes.
either way,
Yeah.
left or right. And this is all level road,
I mean, this looks like it pitches that way now, and goes straight into the,
Straight into the ACEC.
pitch it the other way, fill this strip.
So the elevation here is, about 83 on the road, and it goes up to 13, where the house is. So from here it's going back, so basically the pitch is down towards the street. Same here, the elevation is 8.3 and 10 at the garage, so it goes down towards the street.
Yeah, I don't think this one concerns us as much. I get Dan's point on this one. You've got ACEC right here, and we really don't want to discharge stormwater to ACEC. On the same token, I don't want us, every spring, you're gonna put a load of gravel in there, because you're gonna fix your driveway. The gravel that was there didn't evaporate, it went somewhere.
Right.
It went over there into the wetland, into the ACEC, so that's got its own issues. So I don't have any problem, allowing, I never seem to have much of a problem allowing that to get sealed down. What Dan's looking for is just a little bit of a swale along this edge within the grassed areas, so that you've got some place that this water's gonna come down, it's gonna run down this swale and get a little bit of a treatment as it comes down, and then it's gonna round this corner, it's gonna go into the ACEC anyways, and that's what happens down the end of this driveway. But it interrupts it a little bit and brings it down here to where it would all go.
So you're talking about elevating this portion of it here?
No,
Like a turret type thing?
it's, if you were to look across this driveway,
Uh-huh.
and I'll do it from your direction, your driveway, and that's a little bit of an exaggeration. So here's your driveway surface. So your driveway, it comes, you've got a little bit of a swale right
Kind of
there.
like a gutter,
What's that?
kind of like a gutter?
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
exactly. But, and I mean, it needs to be, there's not a big volume here, so just enough to interrupt the sheet flow that's going across here and bring it down here. So not something that would even trip up the lawnmower, you're gonna be able to mow right through it and. All right, would you do something for us then? Would you identify that on the plan? I don't care whether you draw down next to it and put some little half moons in it in this direction, it would show the direction of flow. So start right up here, and maybe come out 2 feet at the most, is about all you need, 18 inches to 2 feet.
So similar to this?
Yeah, all the way down there, and then put some little half moons in there with the bottom of the moon down towards you. There you go.
Now, how deep does this have to be?
Deep enough to stop that water down. I mean, it wouldn't be much more than an inch. It really, just enough to keep it from running out and over the top. You know, you don't have to do every one of those. put a little arrow there and just put water quality swale, and then put your initials and the date, please.
It's no swing.
SWALE. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the applicant? Are there any butters here? Would anyone like to speak on this project? I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Move to approve with conditions?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Dennis, the same thing you that you just heard me relate to that other gentleman that was in here. There's a 10-day appeals period, starts the day after the postmark on the envelope, we send it out in. If you get a little concerned and you need to get this in before frost flies, you can just sit with it and appeal to the board with a letter, so.
I understand that they closed the plants December 1st, so I'm hoping to get something down before December 1st.
Okay.
Not really
That
rushing
shouldn't be,
those.
that shouldn't be a problem, so.
Do you want me to leave this with you?
Yes, I'm gonna keep that one. If you, do you want a copy
No, I
back?
have-
Because I can give you a clean copy back, and I'll just take this one from you,
Okay.
if you want.
Oh.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. We have an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation to confirm the delineation of a wetland resource area from Philip Singleton at 170 Orchard Street.
Hello again.
Good evening. Yeah, back again. Just for those of you that are here tonight, this is a repeat of a process that we already went through. The first time around, there was a portion of the legal process that was missed. So that hearing ended up to be an illegal hearing. So, not illegal in a bad way, just a non-compliant hearing, let's put it that way. It was not by purpose. So they are back here again tonight for the same thing. You want to give a brief description to the board? We've been here before,
Yes.
but at least for these folks that have shown up tonight.
Good evening, my name is Chris Mello from Eastern Land Survey, and we brought before you a plan for resource area delineation. We've had the resource area flagged by William Manuel of Wetlands and Land Management in the spring before they planted the corn, thankfully. And what we have is this large site, 20-odd acres, and we have a bordering vegetated wetland here, the A series. We've got the B series of a bordering vegetated wetland there. We have a river, so we have an associated riverfront line here. We have a 100-foot buffer line there. I'm gonna flip this over, and this is the rest of the property that goes out there. It's a long piece. So that was that match line. Here's the river again, and the associated riverfront. And we have a D series bordering vegetated wetland. And on the flip side of that, there's an E series. This is upland over here. And we have an associated 100-foot buffer zone right there. And that's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
We have a little swamp.
We did walk that, or a portion of it, I walked it with Bill. I was very pleased with his flagging. I thought he did a great job on a very difficult spot. That spot up front is probably one of the most difficult spots to flag on that site, just given the conditions, and he did a great job, so.
Thank you. I appreciate his work.
Yeah, he did, he does good work. Any questions up front for the applicant? Abutters, would anybody like to speak tonight? Yes, sir.
I'm Kevin Morrison, I'm at 29 Pearson. I'm just kind of curious, what exactly is the purpose of it? What land is, it was my understanding with the, I think one of my neighbors actually called it, there were some plans available. There's some discussion about building on part of the parcel. I'm just curious to know where that is, how deep it is.
There are no plans associated with this project, this application that's before us tonight. The application before us tonight is just to affirm the resource area, and then the project fits to it. They did share with us the last time they were here the potential for an OSRD, which is an open space residential permit. It comes through the planning board, you come in with a conventional subdivision, that ends up to be your yield plan, this conventional subdivision plan, and then you go through the OSRD process, which if you put 50%, and this isn't our process, so I might have some of my figures off, but you put a certain amount of the land aside as open space, and for that you get reduced infrastructure. If it's over 50%, you may get a bonus unit. There's other ways to earn units under that. So for putting this space aside in open space, you get reduced infrastructure. So you get a project that is similar to Caldwell Farm, or the project on Elm Street, or the little subdivision that's off of Highfield Road. Those are all our OSRDs in the town. Some of them you drive through and you wouldn't even realize they were different than conventional subdivisions, but they are in essence.
Is it something similar to what's being proposed off of Pearson Drive?
No, off of Pearson Drive is a 40B, and they get reduced infrastructure because they get to just look past our zoning. So they don't need to come in with that conventional yield plan. They don't have to, there's some steps that they just get to walk through because they just don't have to comply with our zoning.
And based upon your review, I don't know I appreciate your explaining this. Based on the site walk or whatever you're talking about, is there, wetlands identified? Has that mapping been kind of figured out? Is
Yes.
some of that protected?
Yeah,
And how do
yes.
we find out
These
what
are
is?
these are those series that you heard talked about a few minutes ago. So on this plan, there's a wetland
May I
selected.
stand?
Yes, please. Yes, step up, please.
Here's Orchard Street here. Pearson is over here. The property boundary is in red, and the resource area delineation is in green. So we have a resource area here, wetland boundary, we've got another pocket here, and then the property obviously goes much further back. That's the match line, and we have a wetland both sides of it towards the rear of the property. So that's the protected resource area under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Wait a minute, what's the protected area within the green?
Yes.
Well, within the green and an area 100 feet around that green is, it's called the 100-foot buffer zone. Now, the riverfront area is going to be a 200-foot area, no buffer zone, 2 riparian zones, they call them, 0 to 100 and 100 to 200. And there are some, the regulations change a little bit within those 2 zones, and they change relative to when these lots were formed. These lots are obviously formed after 1996, or will be formed after 1996, so they will jump through all the hoops relative to riverfront. They will get 10% of the area within the riverfront to impact. If it was before 96, you get 10% or 5,000 square feet, whichever is greater. They're not going to get the greater of the 2.
So, if I'm clear on this, are you
This is
saying
Corsa Brook, right?
Yes,
all
it
of
is.
this is buildable land? Well, sorry, is this the 100-foot buffer right here?
That's jurisdictional.
So here is buildable land?
Yeah, and I just want to let something be known too. If these folks wanted to come across here and access this, and they wanted to cross that wetland, there's a provision for them to cross that wetland. They could impact that under the Wetlands Protection Act. There's a 0 taking of bordering vegetated wetland in Massachusetts, so that at a minimum there'd be a 1-to-1 replication if they decided to do that. There'd be an alternatives analysis. We'd look at them and say, why do you need to take that? Why can't this project be completed on the portions of the lot that you have? So there would be some work involved with it, but just because it's mapped as a wetland, or just because it's buffer zone, doesn't mean that you're never gonna see anything in it.
Why do they call it a buffer zone?
Because the wetland itself has certain values and functions. One of them is wildlife. One of the things that you want a buffer zone for is wildlife zone, or what they would call a life zone. Something that uses that wetland. I think there's probably one creature that uses that wetland and never comes out of it, and that's a fairy shrimp. Everything else, all your amphibians, your woods frogs, they travel hundreds, if not thousands of feet. It is also for water quality. If you impact that area right there, the closer you get with lawn surfaces and driveways and roof surfaces and those things, you're gonna find that you're gonna diminish the quality of the water in that wetland and flowing to that wetland. So that's what those buffer zones are for.
Can I ask another question?
You may ask as many as you want.
So, when I bought my house in 2000, it was explained to me that this whole area was protected. It was
Conservation area that could
61A
never be
or
built.
Well,
something.
61A is not a conservation protection. 61A means that you're in some sort of farming relative to the Farm Act. So as long as you keep it in 61A, you get a reduced tax burden. When you decide you want to pull it out of 61A, if you pull it out of 61A and you do a project, I don't know what the years are, you need to go down and talk to the assessors, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. There's a look-back period, and you have to pay those rollbacks, you have to pay those back taxes. The difference between what you pay under 61A and what you pay with it out of 61A. So again, it's a tax reduction, it's not a conservation protection of the land, something different.
So we misunderstood.
Yes, sir.
I'm Jerry Strazzula. I live on 170 Orchard Street. If I could show you right here, it's right here. I recently put a rather large garage back here. It's 30 by 50. Back in April.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I was wondering why it didn't show up on the photograph.
Yeah, you guys were just doing aerial.
Yeah, we did the aerial in February.
This is the only access into this back lot right here. This whole area in here, there's all drainage pipes that run and kind of disperse the water. Here's my buffer zone right here, and I was compliant to keep it way out of the buffer zone. But this gets wet, real wet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, real wet.
Oh, yeah. Water, it was dry, relatively dry when we were out there, and there were some spots that were pretty squishy to walk in, because you've got clay layers with gravel running through it, so you've got water seeping out of that hillside almost all the time.
There's a live river that actually runs underground that they dug with the excavator when they did my garage.
I'm not surprised that that area is full of water. Yeah.
So anything that goes on back here is going to affect the water table. I'm up high on a hill. It's not going to affect me, I don't think, I hope not. But this is a huge concern right here, is getting in and out. That's the only access to this property back here. And I mean, just digging out back here, you've got all these wetlands right here. I've heard tales of a 14-home development being put back there. Twice tales, I don't see anything on paper here or anything, but.
I think it's all speculation at this point.
I'm just really, really concerned. It's nice coming out in the morning and seeing 30, 40 deer in the backyard. We see all sorts of creatures, critters. We have bald eagles back there and everything. I don't want them, chased out of there.
I get it. I get it.
I'm really, really concerned about it. That's.
So if these are the buffer zones here, are they, is this where we're gonna go?
Well, it's up to them. We have no plan to look at, so I don't want to speculate on what we might say. They could come in, they could potentially come in with a plan that is all in the upland and leaves us completely out of it. Potential. The land's there. You look at where those buffer zones outlines are, they could hug this edge up here, this upper edge of this field. If they don't go into that buffer zone or into that riverfront area, they're out of jurisdiction as far as the Conservation Commission is concerned.
So your concern is just inside these lines?
Correct, correct.
So that's,
That's our authority, let's put it that way, inside those lines.
And you've checked out those areas and agree with what they've got now?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I didn't give Bill any real information when the gentleman that went out there, and Bill Emanuel, the gentleman that went out there and actually did the flagging. And I knew Mike pretty well, Mike Bogaris, and I was in his
Right.
property many times with
Right.
him and walked across
Right.
here, walked out here before before this house was here.
Sure.
And I knew that was a very difficult area just because of the way the water comes out through the layers and the way the wetlands form there. So I said to him, look, I want you to take me to an area that gave you a particular problem when you did this out here. I want to look at an area that was hard for you. He took me right to it. So I was pretty pleased that he acknowledged that it was like that. And when I went out there and I saw how sawtoothed it was and the work he had done to delineate, looked at the vegetation lines, looked where he put his flags, I was pretty pleased where he had picked to put his flags. If you can get a couple of biologists to get out there and be within 5 feet of each other, when you're looking at a 50% plant community is kind of where you draw your line, that's pretty good. That's pretty close.
Doug, can I just interject a couple thoughts?
Yes, certainly you may. It's your
Well, I'm
project.
Bill West, I work with our partner, Chairman Crossroads Trust.
Folks, could you take a seat now, please, if you're done looking at the plan, and we'll listen to.
Can I just get one clarification for myself then?
1 second, as soon
Okay.
as he's
Yeah,
through,
I just
I'll
wanted to
entertain
point.
more questions.
Okay.
So we're the developer, and we're still tooling around with our plans. Our intention is to have about 70% of this be open space at the end of it, but where we have a 14-unit yield plan currently. Again, we're not done with it, which would translate into a 16-unit housing plan on a smaller amount of the land. But what I wanted to say tonight is we would be happy to flyer the neighborhood in the next few weeks and do a neighborhood meeting somewhere just to kind of explain what we're doing before we start the process, so everybody kind of knows what it is we're thinking about and at least understands where we're coming from as we go into what will be, likely we will be back to see you with our, because it will be jurisdictional, and we'll start the planning board OSRD process, hopefully from our perspective, fairly soon. But prior to doing that, we'd like to meet with the neighbors, just so everybody knows what we're doing prior to going to a meeting. So, I'm not sure, Chris, when we'll be ready to do that, but I would suggest it'd be pretty soon.
Yep.
That we'd show you what we're planning. Again, that would just be unofficially, so you'd know, and then we'd listen to what you folks had to say, and then move ahead with that process.
What, you would have, sir, you had one more question that you
Well,
wanted?
I need things re-explained to me sometimes, so I apologize. So you're saying with this whole basically 20+ acre lot, really the only protected area, and it's not generally protected, you were just explaining there are ways to maybe access over here.
Yeah.
You're saying anything outside the green area is fair game, I guess.
Anything outside this buffer, so you're gonna see where it says 100-foot buffer zone? So anything outside of these dashed lines, so
Okay.
anything in here, anything up in here. So you've got the 200-foot riverfront, they can get into, they can impact a little bit of that. That is some, if you wanna look up any of these rules and regulations too, it's pretty dry reading and it's pretty legal, but 310 CMR, so Code of Mass Regulations, and Section 10, which is the Wetlands Protection Act. And the riverfront area it's 4 or 5 pages long, it's 1058 or 1059, something like that. But you can go in, you can read about that, you can read about bordering vegetated wetland. It'll tell you what is a bordering vegetated wetland, what are the performance standards, what are mitigating measures, and then maybe make a little more clarity to it.
Okay. And one other question, so was this like all surveyed out there as well? Like are there stakes you were just mentioning, like?
I didn't go walk the corners because the corners and the stakes weren't really my concern.
Okay.
These flags were in place when we were out there, yes,
Okay,
they're
for the
wetland
conservation.
flags.
I see,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Could
welcome.
you, I don't know if this is fair to ask you, but could you give a guess as to what percentage of the 20 acres is outside the resource area, is buildable?
No, Did you know at this point? No, I couldn't even give a wild guess.
I just thought that might.
Yeah, I mean, and they're too odd shaped to kind of look at it and say, it's a real funny polygon there, so.
I don't know,
Yes, sir.
Oh, hi, I think what people, I understand what the board is up against tonight. We're just defining the wetlands, and the developer wants to make sure that they're clear on where the available, well, I'm right here on, right here.
Okay.
So the drier, more buildable areas will be
Behind you.
Right, and I think what, you know, we've been there since 1979, and every year in the spring when we hear the tractors turning up, the thing was, okay, we're all set for another year. Corn is going in. But I think what you have to understand now is we're in the middle of the 40B also. It's gonna be a big increase in traffic. And the way it looks right now, we're just gonna end up with it. As many people as we have to go against it or give our opinions or whatever, we're gonna end up with 24 units down there. Now we're looking at 14 units over here. I mean, I don't know what kind of traffic that's gonna be for Orchard Street, or I have no idea what's gonna happen. So as you go forward, it may be a great plan, but you have to understand what our position is going to be. We're gonna be very leery about a lot of this. And I knew as soon as I saw delineation of wetlands, I knew, you knew what was gonna happen. And we knew it was down the road. But as long as you understand what we're gonna, where we are.
We certainly understand the pressure you're feeling in your neighborhood right now.
It's just, it's so many changes so fast,
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, we don't have a choice with the 40B, it seems, no matter what we do. So, I mean, there's 24 units on our side, now 14 units on this side. I don't know what kind of a buffer zone I'm gonna have with my property, whether the wetlands are gonna force it, to my backyard. It may have to, I don't know. Am I gonna all of a sudden have somebody's, 20 feet in their backyard and another huge house there, I don't know. It's gonna change the neighborhood.
It will, yeah. It's been a field for a long time, it will change the neighborhood. Yes, yes.
I just wondered on that, I didn't understand that map there that they have, the plan. How close to the delineated wetland areas can you build? Can you build right up against it, or?
Yes, in theory, you can build right up against it. With a clean sheet like this, we have an unwritten 25-foot no disturb, 50-foot no structure. It's not a bylaw, but that's what we ask for. It's pretty reasonable. So certainly you can get into the buffer zone. You're allowed to, at the local level, we're allowed to authorize the taking of up to 5,000 square feet of wetland with at least a minimum of a 1-to-1 replication. But you have to do alternatives analysis and things such as that before that's awarded to you. It's not just, well, we want to go in and take this wetland area. Well, why do you need to do that? If you've got area up here and we do the same thing, let's modify the project. Let's discuss modifying the project.
And how close to the Forcer Brook can they build?
It doesn't look like they're going to get any closer than, 100 feet?
I don't think we'll be in the 200-foot buffer.
So you're going to stay completely out of the 200-foot buffer? That's encouraging. Yeah, they're going to stay out of the 200-foot buffer there, so.
That way I don't have to deal with the river. No alternatives analysis.
So we haven't seen it yet, but what I'm hearing is there wouldn't be anything proposed within the 200-foot riverfront. But that.
Is that stone wall that's in the field, is that on that chart?
Yeah, that's the boundary. That's the red line.
That's the red line?
It's pretty much a stone wall around the farm.
Okay, because I own right to the stone wall.
Yes. Yep. Anybody that abuts it pretty much has a stone wall in the backyard.
Yeah.
All the way around.
Does that have a ratio for the acreage that's there?
No, it's per project.
Per project?
Yeah.
So chances are he probably only uses one there.
We're not going.
He's got to use.
Yeah, we're not.
We can just cut to the chase there. We're not crossing this. We're not
Yeah,
going back.
we're not gonna be down that.
We just don't, we've got a lot of land.
It's gonna make some people happy, other people less happy, so.
Less buffer zone.
That's what I said.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, exactly, it's gonna get more complicated as you get back there.
So remember, if we have,
We're not bad road
if you think about a 20-acre site, I'm gonna generalize here and say we're probably, 15 acres of open space that will not be owned by anyone other than, however we work it out, the town, the homeowners association, and 5 or 6, maybe a little more, I'm not sure exactly, of house lots.
What size house lots are you proposing?
Well, we're not quite there yet, but,
So 200 feet
probably
is like way out there.
around 10,000 square feet, 10 or 12,000 square feet, so small lots,
So you're gonna be that
medium-sized
far
homes.
from
And when I say
the
medium-sized
water?
home,
Yes.
we're building homes now in Swampscott that are 2,400 square feet. That includes a two-car garage and a full basement.
So is it like a cluster type of scenario? or-
It'll,
Yes.
yeah, it'll be clustered, but it won't be condominiums, it'll be homes in fee simple, so everyone will own their own lot. We don't really wanna do condos.
I just had one question. I'm at 17 Pearson Drive. Right here.
Okay.
I just saw this. I don't know exactly what this is. Is this-
That's a console, it's a 10-foot console.
Topo line.
It's topo lines.
Oh,
Yeah.
so is that buildable, that property there? or-
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's just showing that this little peak right here is 10 feet higher than this area right here, that's all.
What happened is the 10s are in a different pen weight, and all the 2s are.
Yeah, you can see them here, they're very light, but there are lines, other lines in there.
And I don't know if this is a question for you, but if this has a little help. Obviously, what we're going through with the 40B project that we're still opposing to, study after study was done as far as if the, Byfield Water District can handle it. And this is gonna be the same thing. When does that all take place as well?
That'll be up to the applicants to take it to Byfield Water. Byfield Water is a private entity, so the town doesn't have an awful lot to do relative to their supply of water. So again, that's gonna be up to the applicant when they wanna go there. But we're kind of getting into details of a project that's really not before us tonight. So really, the only thing before us tonight was the application of these, was the approval of these flags. So I don't want to go too much further down this road. A couple more questions if you've got them, and then we're going to get back to business.
I just wondered about septic systems and how that would be required for that size area.
This Board of Health.
Yeah, septic systems will be Board of Health, but planning board may get involved relative to the yield plan, but have a discussion with them. I know at one point that they were, the planning board was generally satisfied on a plan such as this to go in and take some grab samples and then look at the Essex County soil chart and say, yeah, we've got consistent soils throughout this, so we can probably get our 16 perks. I think now that they're a little more concerned with making sure that each of those houses in the yield plan would be able to be constructed and would have its own septic system, so they're a little more careful with it now, but that's a conversation that you should have with the Board of Health and/or the planning board.
So they'd all have to be perked individually?
I can't answer that for you, whether each one needs to be perked individually or not, I can't answer that. Most of these developments, or many of these developments, end up with a bunch of perks to verify that they can do it, and then a gang system. Most of them have a gang system. So one septic system for the neighborhood. Yes, sir.
Would any of this property still be maintained as farmland?
That would be up to the applicant.
It's interesting you asked that because the OSRD for this town of Newbury allows certain uses for the open space, and one of the uses was agricultural. And I thought, I know they grow corn there now on that property. If it was something the neighborhood preferred or didn't prefer, we'd be happy to go either way on it. For example, allowing the future open space to be used to continue to grow corn. If that was the neighborhood's wish, we'd listen to you on that. I don't know if you find that a good use or an aggravating use, but that's why I say we should probably meet just to learn those things a little bit, because I thought it'd be kind of cool if the open space we leave behind stayed agricultural.
That was my concern.
Yeah.
I moved there a year ago and I knew nothing about this, absolutely nothing.
I didn't know anything about it a year ago either, so
we're just a big project on the Marblehead, don't you?
We're just finishing
on Humphrey
project on Humphrey Street with Got the last C of O today for a 14 unit, very small lot.
Yep.
Single family homes, 2,500 square feet, selling in that 650 to 750 range in that case. And we're just finishing up with the last couple of punch lists. And one in Wenham as well. We have a 40B in Wenham that's 20 units of 10 duplexes.
Folks?
We're getting-
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Neighborhood discussion material.
I'm sorry.
All right, we're gonna move on here.
I just wanna ask, are you aware of the history of that farm?
We're just starting to dig into that a little bit. We love your input. We seem to have found some odd connection to Longfellow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, not so odd, really.
Well, it was for us, because we
Well-
didn't know anything about the site before we walked onto it.
Yeah.
But we weren't expecting that it would have a connection
Yeah.
to Longfellow.
Yeah.
So it was odd to us.
Definitely, yeah.
All right.
So will the abutters be notified? I'm sorry, will the
What's that?
abutters be notified by mail if we're gonna have a discussion about this? So that's
Well,
the question
if
for the
it's a
developer.
neighborhood discussion, that's up to the applicant, how they inform you. If it's processed through the town, certainly if they come back before the Conservation Commission, you will get a notice like you just received. So the same mailing list would be used for a project that would be used for this application tonight.
Okay, I'll do this after.
Okay, all right. And so what I would like to do is get back to the point that, since I was the one that went out there and walked there and verified the flags, I will make the motion that we approve the ANRAD as presented, and the resource areas of the bordering vegetated wetland and the riverfront area.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. You're very welcome. Appreciate it. Oh, that's right, we did. You're welcome.
Thank you, folks.
Take care. You gotta be, either Steve or.
I'm Mike.
You're Mike, are you just representing the project? All right, we have a request for determination to remove and reframe an existing roof system and make general repairs from Steve and Mary Ann Porter at 20 Plum Island Boulevard. Since you're neither of them, did they send you with a check for the filing fee?
No, I just.
Okay, that's not a problem, we can, we will hold the documents, so I'm not concerned with that. All right, Mike, you just want to explain to the board the general project and what you want to do?
Looks like the roof has taken some quite heavy snow load and closed the whole roof. It's ponding on the roof now. So it's gone beyond fixing it. It's got this frame strong wood.
Okay.
And it's an old crooked house and the floors.
Anything touching the ground?
Nothing, just
Nothing's touching the ground, you're just talking about that roof
the
surface?
roof and the crooked floor. I'm gonna jack that back.
Okay. Crooked floor, is the floor crooked relative to a foundation issue?
No, it's the framing of the floor
Gotcha.
itself, it's not
All
the
right.
house structure.
Okay.
It's a flat roof now?
Number two.
Yeah, not really flat, but pretty close, pretty close to it.
The limit,
Oh,
the
yeah.
shingles.
Gotcha.
It's gonna go up a little higher to get the water off.
You try to tuck it right up under the windows,
Yeah,
get as close as you can.
there's no overhang or nothing, just. Not just like this, instead of like that.
No kidding.
That's the weirdest roof I've seen. Curious to see what's behind the, barrel.
It's on the ground, right in front of that area. Do we have a picture of it? Yeah, I'm kind of looking for the vegetation that's on the ground, so.
That first
Okay,
picture
that-
here's got some shrubs there.
There you go. from the board?
It's pretty straightforward.
Jim, you good down there? Yep. And I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Move to approve with a negative determination.
Do we have a second?
Sure, I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye. Right, this is the same that you've heard me explain already a couple of times tonight, that once this is issued, there is a 10-day appeals period, but if you need to get going on this project, I know you've already been held up, if the applicant issues a letter to the Conservation Commission acknowledging that they're working within the risk period, then you can sign off on your permit, and you can get going a little bit earlier on it if you choose to. Usually we'll know that if, a little bit about if there's a potential for risk, because if someone's going to appeal it, they would have either been here in the audience, or they'll call up within the first couple of days, because they get nervous that we're going to let the decision out and they're not going to know it. So usually we know pretty soon if there's going to be an interest in it.
Other business?
There is no other business. Ooh.
Have you heard anything from the driving range folks, Sorensen?
Sorensen is waiting for selectmen, I guess selectmen are working on some conditions right now.
Yeah.
I think he's waiting for those conditions. I have had a discussion with, is it Michael Novak, the engineer?
Yeah.
I've had a discussion with Michael, a good 3 weeks ago or so, relative to the change in the driveway. We discussed which process he may or may not use to bring it forward. You're welcome, Mike, take care. And that there would be additional process. That's as far as it's gone right now. There's no application before us.
Yeah, you gotta design the driveway.
Yeah. Yeah, and when they came in, I mean, they had the kind of a simple, we're gonna go up and turn. And I think we all realize that there's gonna be a little switchback to that, it's a little steep there, so that, I think the design might be a little something into the design.
It's not just an amendment.
Well, that's something I brought to Michael, and I says, well, you've got a couple of choices. I says, if it's straight up, then my guess is that your impacts are no greater than your impacts are with the existing driveway, especially if you're gonna take and you're gonna mitigate anything you do here over on the existing driveway. Your stone water's gonna be the same, everything's gonna be the same. You're not adding anything. So in that case there, you could amend it if you wanted to. If your impacts are greater, then DEP's policy is that you'll file a new notice of intent. I think what they'd like to do is amend their notice so that they keep the one that they've got active, and that the only things that are up for grabs would be the changes, and they wouldn't have to, or we wouldn't have to rehear the whole project again and then open that whole project up to comments and everything else. So the way they come forward with this is going to be up to their team as they decide what their risks are, with the different processes.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Other than that, there is no other business tonight unless anybody else has any.
Move for adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Yeah.
All those in favor? Aye.